it just burns me up when I hear someone say, I follow this person or I follow that person. It's like, well, that person has probably read and they've decided what they're going to tell you. And all you have is what they've told you. You don't have any knowledge for yourself to be able to tell you if they're showing you the right thing or not. And more importantly, because they read and they dissected it and then they regurgitated to you what they wanted you to know, you paid them money.
Welcome to the American Dream Builder and Investor Podcast, where our vision is to inspire busy professionals, especially first and second generation immigrants and Americans, to explore the state of the American dream in 2022 and beyond. That is the trinity of freedom: time, geography, and financial freedom. Awesome. Super excited for our guest today, Patrick Robert from North Carolina. So I've spoken to Robert before and we bonded on one thing, real estate investing, but he has so much more experiences rather than just investing. He's also an entrepreneur. He's also a coach. He's also a lawyer. He has founded 2 law firms. He also owns a portfolio of residential and commercial real estate, including office condos, car washes, and residential rentals. So he is a very successful professional and also entrepreneur. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you, Patrick. And would you like to add anything else to the bio that I mentioned, apart from what I just talked about, your entrepreneur and your professional career?
Thanks for the introduction. I'm excited about being here. I think I mentioned to you that this is the first time I've ever done a podcast. I've never even listened to one, so I think this is actually pretty cool. I also buy and sell companies. I have a number of businesses that I've purchased over the years, a home warranty business. I've had a commercial cleaning franchise, appliance repair business. You know, it just kind of varies. I've done consulting, I've done coaching for people starting up businesses or trying to grow their companies. So there's a few things going on.
Wow, that is so cool. You know, like for our podcast, American Dream Builder Investor, right? We want to use stories like yours to inspire many other busy professionals, and especially first and second generation immigrants who my heart is close to as well, with my background from another country. And, you know,
Mine
it's just,
too, actually.
Oh, really? That's the part I guess I never.
Yeah, we didn't actually talk about that. So I was born in Jamaica. I came here
What?
when I was 5. And interestingly enough, consistent with the sort of theme of your podcast, when I was in Jamaica, they told us that the streets were paved with gold. So like I was so excited to get here. We landed. I'm like, show me the golden streets. It's gonna be great.
Wow.
It was not paved with gold, but you know, in a sense, yes. But I literally thought I was gonna drive on streets that were golden. That was gonna be like you read in like the fairy tale books and stuff like that. Like when I
Oh,
landed.
wow.
So,
That is crazy. I did
yeah,
not
that
know
is great.
that. No, not just part of the gold part of the story, but your background. I didn't know that because
Yeah.
I thought, you know, because you came out at such a young age, like it just makes it so much more of an inspiring story coming from another culture, even though younger age, and how you flourished in this country. Yeah.
Well, you know, that was the reason why I was interested in your podcast once you told me what the focus was. I mean, it's consistent with my background. My sister came a couple of years after me. We have, I don't know, more than half of our family still in Jamaica, you know,
Wow.
family in Jamaica. We have family in England. I've got family in China.
What?
Yeah, I have a cousin who
Look at the
teaches.
connections.
Yeah, I've got a cousin who teaches in China, and actually my grandmother is a part Chinese. I don't know if you realize this, but there's actually a very significant Chinese population, more so than the recent with all the commercial activity. Back when I was growing up, we had a lot of Chinese Jamaicans who would come over the years to work the various types of plantations. We had a rail system, all kinds of different enterprises where they would go to China, try to get workers to come and work, and then people would simply stay. And you know, many people went into merchant work and open stores and a variety of different things. So you'll see there are actually a lot of Jamaicans or Chinese individuals who are Jamaican who have accents like sound like Bob Marley, not like me, just so
Yeah.
just a little
Yeah.
little tidbit. I don't think we never talked about it on the previous calls.
Yeah, we didn't. And I do know about like a large Chinese population in the Caribbean. I had friends from Trinidad and Tobago whose grandma was like Chinese and she's like a distant sister. And I would joke about it. But
Yeah.
this is so cool. I feel like I hit a jackpot in podcast just from the conversation without knowing it. And I just wanted to interview you for your and overall success and what you've been building, but this is even better. So maybe walk us through a little bit more, like what brought you to the US, the story, and how did you get to where you're at? Maybe take us one step at a time.
Well, my parents were married, but my dad was living in the States. He had another family that he had started there and came back and married my mom after he divorced his first wife. We moved to New York to stay with him, and that was a disaster. My dad's not the best in any light. He's a very brilliant man. He was a plumber, had his own business, did well, but not a good husband, and really not that great a father either. So They separated when I was young. I went to school in Brooklyn all the way through high school and studied at a high school in Coney Island. Then I went to college in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins and straight from college to law school at Duke. And then kind of bounced around. I went to San Diego for a while. That didn't work out. Couldn't pass the bar in California. I came back to North Carolina. By
Wow.
that point, my mom had remarried. They had moved to North Carolina. So it was like, okay, this is home. This is where we kind of dig in roots. And even back then, we'll get into the real estate part, but even back then, Raleigh, Durham was still kind of a hot area. People knew it. I had heard about it from living in New York, and there were just opportunities to make money, particularly in real estate, because relative to prices in New York, for example, it was just so much cheaper, and it's still so much cheaper than, I lived in San Diego, and for the price of a home in San Diego, I could buy an entire apartment complex. So and things are changing a little bit, but not that much. I mean, it's just a good environment. So I came here, I settled, met my wife. I started working as a prosecutor. So I was an assistant district attorney in a couple of counties, but I always had an interest in real estate. My stepfather owned a Century 21 in New York for a time, and he owned a lot of rental property. And so watching him build his portfolio and collect rent, I was like, so you do nothing, they pay you? Where do I sign? Like, let's do it. So
Yeah.
it just kind of, it was in my blood, basically, from like, I met him in middle school, and he always had a lot of money, but he was never struggling, right? And it was like, when you're an immigrant, my mom is a single mom. She raised me and my sister. My sister went to Vassar, I went to Hopkins, and my mom put us both through school. So
Wow.
she worked 2 jobs. She went to school. Yeah, the typical immigrant thing. Like
It is, but it's still very admiring. Today
yeah, I mean, she did it. She hadn't actually. Well, the reason why it was so important was because she didn't actually get a chance to go
Mm,
to school at all in Jamaica. She was the second to last child out of 11. And
mm.
so most of her older siblings had a chance to go either to college or to get some level of schooling, but she was the last one, and essentially there wasn't any money left, and there really wasn't any willpower by then sent her to school. So, she missed out, basically. So for her, it was really important for me and my sister to get what she didn't get. It was important, but I didn't really care too much for school. I wanted to be a Marine. I wanted to go and like shoot something. So I didn't end up going to the Marine Corps because, some guy had came to my high school when I was I think I was a freshman in high school, and he talked about how much more money you could make if you went to college instead of just graduating from high school. Put up this graph on, like, remember those old projectors, and you put the plastic on the thing and it projects onto the screen? I just remember seeing it was like a big difference. It was like lifetime earnings for college grads versus high school grads, massive gap. I was like, I'll go to college. I like that. I like the way that chart looks. That's kind of how it went. But my mom had been pushing. My sister went to school and she had all these scholarships, and I was supposed to follow in her footsteps. And I figured the Marine Corps would get me out of where we were. And that's all I really cared about back then. And
Yeah.
now I'm glad I went, but just a lot of things that kind of played into it.
Yeah, I feel there's so many areas I want to dive deeper into. One is I felt like I was listening to the Rich Dad Poor Dad story. You were talking about your family
I
background.
don't have a rich dad, though. Like, we didn't have an example like that. Well, kind of. I guess my stepfather,
Yeah.
the ironic thing is he didn't finish high school either.
Mm.
So he left school. He grew up in the South, and they were poor, and they worked farms. And so he went to New York. Well, this is a rich dad story. He went to New York. I think he said he had about either $17 or $19 in his pocket. One of his family members brought him a bus ticket, took the bus up to New York. He had an aunt that was living there, so he's like slept on her couch and basically worked 2 jobs for like 40 years and saved money, invested, just basically the type of thing that build wealth over time. Annuities, because he didn't really know much about the stock market, buying real estate. He had property in New York, he had property in North Carolina, rental properties, just ways to kind of build passive income from every direction, essentially. I like money. So I like the whole money thing from an early age. I started reading about stocks and like, so you buy it once and it pays you forever with dividends. I'm all like, that's like great. It's like, who doesn't do that, right? So then I started explaining to him how he could take the money and do a little bit more. So for a while, like, we were partners on some ventures. He's very retired now. Like, he's like 88 in October. Doesn't really want to do much. I'm only 47. I'm trying to come up. I'm trying to get a little bit more money, meet all the syndicators that are out there. There's a million syndicators these days. And meet all the people on LinkedIn, just build more relationships and kind of expand, not only like just personally, but it's good to meet people like you and I bonded. It's good to meet people who are trying to advance, as opposed to just meeting people who are like, hey, I've got a job, I'm comfortable, yay me. It's like, yeah, that's good, but
Yeah.
about more, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's good to be surrounded with like-minded people for
Mhm.
sure. I know you have a lot of success, not just in your real estate ventures, but also your professional career on the lawyer side. And given that we have limited time today, I'll just ask some of the questions some of the
Sure.
listeners may be really curious about. Like,
Okay.
for example, like talk us through about you failed the bar exam you mentioned and you didn't give up. Like, what was your motivations behind it?
Well, in full candor and disclosure, I failed the bar exam in California 2 times. And the second time I missed it by 2.25 points. I'll never forget. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, really? You can spot me like a quarter point, half a point here or there and get me up to like passing? This is ridiculous. So I based kind of, when you don't have anything, the only thing you can kind of use to define yourself is your academic achievement. So school and studying is one thing that always came pretty natural to me. If
Mm,
I put my mind to it, I could learn. Now, I have a photographic memory, but the bar exam was a little different. It completely broke me to fail that test and
mm,
to rebuild your confidence. Because, when you're, I think, especially for immigrants, like immigrant parents tell their kids, you have to study. Like, you
yes,
have no options. Study,
yes,
right?
yes.
I don't care. You could play sports really well, or you could do a lot of things. But if your grades, you can bring home a B, they don't even want to talk to you. So it was really hard to like rebuild.
Yeah, understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand every immigrant family can be a little different, but I agree in general. We're taking a lot of pressure in the studying. And I remember growing up, if I didn't achieve well, I felt like my identity is just destroyed. And perhaps when we're dealing with other people in the future, maybe kids, friends, kids, like we can help them think differently because there's just
Yeah.
so much more to it. But we didn't know better. But hey, you turned out to be
Well,
really well.
what's really funny, like when you read studies and people talk about like the people who do really well, like in the law, there's this saying, the people who get A's are law professors, the
Hmm,
people who get B's are judges, and the people who get C's are the practicing lawyers. They're
hmm,
the rich ones, right?
hmm.
Because really in success, most of your Congress people were C students, most of your CEOs, frankly, were C or D
Yes.
students. It's really more about personality and building like the soft skills than it is about the quant skills, right? How many people work for Facebook or Google who have like PhDs and all the D's you can think of, but they're in the back. Like Zuckerberg didn't even graduate, right? So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
the skills to actually be successful are much more about the interpersonal skills, the ability to sell, the ability to communicate, the ability to write, way more than the ability to crunch numbers. I went to
Mm-hmm.
engineering school and I wasn't the top student, but I could do math in my head. It's like, I took organic chemistry and I could visualize the molecules and that stuff was easy. But then that didn't really matter when you have to take like a bar exam. Okay. But once you pass the test, now it's like, okay, you only get clients if the clients can relate to you. If you're as stiff as a board, you're not getting any clients. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
how many A's you got in law school or undergrad or what have you. But immigrant parents don't really understand that. They know school, right?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
mom was like, I didn't graduate. You will graduate. You have to go to college. You have to do this. You have to do that. In Jamaica, if you're not in the medical field, you're not really anybody. It's true. It's just that most Jamaicans are like nurses, doctors. That's kind of
Oh.
where we go. Or we go into engineering. Like I've got like cousins that are in engineering. If you
Mm,
go to college for us, you've made it if you
mm,
are in this category.
mm.
But I'm sure in other countries the goal is something different. Like
Yeah, it can be, but it's good that you're reminding us grades is not everything, and don't let the external factors determine who you are and destroy your identity,
right,
and find
right.
opportunities to move past that. Another piece that the listener will be very interested in is because I know that once you get in the legal space and you can start earning good salaries, but not everyone is having money to invest. Some attorneys may be so stressed out with the debts they have
Yeah,
and when they're
yeah.
spending more than what they earn. So how did you make the transition to own your first piece of real estate?
We had talked about Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read that book. The part that I took away from it was just OPM. If you don't have the money, but you have the idea, if you can find the deal and you can help someone else understand how to make money from the deal, money's available.
Other
So
people's money.
other
Yep.
people's money, your dad, your mom, somebody has cash. You don't have it, but you have the deal. Something can be worked out. I'll tell you the thing for the listener who's young and thinking about a career, I would encourage anyone to go into law because law makes everything possible, right?
Hmm.
For me, law is beautiful. It's kind of like a work of art. It's just practicing for others is a little hit or miss, but I can walk into a room and if people are discussing like a contract, I'm not intimidated and I fully understand and can negotiate, right? Or if you walk into a firm that does tech work, and they start talking patents. Okay, no problem. We can talk patents or trademarks or what have you. There isn't an area of business or even your personal life that's not fully impacted by the law. So if you can speak that language, you're so much more prepared to do business in any context. Real estate is all about law. You got to understand the zoning ordinances. You got to negotiate contracts. You've got to be able to just negotiate in general. The more you can structure a deal and understand how to make a deal a win-win, the more you're going to do well in real estate. I had some investors, my stepdad initially put up the money. This was back then, it's just ironic. People are complaining about like 5%, interest rate. When I started, 5%, people were losing their minds because rates had gone down to 5%. I remember brokers telling me it will never be like this again. You need to buy everything you can buy. It will never be 5% again, ever in your lifetime. I remember that conversation. That was 20 years ago. So how ironic is it that we're at like 5-6%, and now people are like, oh my God, it's 5-6%. They're losing their senses. But
Yeah.
it really was to get in. It really was starting with just going to people who I knew had funds after I found a deal and trying to work something out for them to invest.
This podcast is sponsored by Life Mission Capital, founded by me, Micy Liu, where my life mission is to help busy professionals invest well so they can focus on what matters. All my life, I was taught to study and work hard for my freedom, until one day I realized that unless I let my money work hard for me, I will always be trading my most precious resource, time, for freedom. Since then, we have also been helping our investors passively diversify into more than 1,000 units of recession and inflation-resistant alternative investments, such as multifamily, mobile home parks, short-term rentals, and more. Learn more with our free ebooks at lifemissioncapital.com.
That makes sense. So the next piece I know you wanted to talk about was the economy piece. So I know you've been investing in real estate for a while, and you read a lot, and your profession, you see a lot of different things as well. So how do you see the economy for the next few years based on your experience?
So at this point, this is my third major economic downturn. Okay, Y2K, which most people don't even talk about anymore, is like the early 2000s, the real estate recession. Then technically we had the Great Recession of 2020, which everyone kind of forgets. And now we've got whatever this will be, which will be a massive recession. I think the problem, or the thing that concerns me and I see opportunity, is that unfortunately, there are a lot of people getting into real estate, but they're late. I got in, I was buying like apartments in multifamily in 17, 18, 19. I was selling in 20. Cap rates were at 7%, 8%, 12% in some instances, and now they're at like 3, 4. It's much harder to make money now, and it's much harder to source, the really good deals, right? There isn't really an off-market deal anymore, right? I mean, everybody's sending letters, everybody's trying to negotiate with the brokers and get the pocket listings, and so we all reading, like, everyone's reading the same playbook. They've all gone to the Dave Lindahl course or whatever the hot course is right now, and they're all doing the same thing. And so it worries me because the people who are selling are getting out. And the people who are buying most of the time aren't buying with an eye towards making money at the purchase. They're buying with an eye towards making money 5 years from now. And that's the danger, is you don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now. If you're cash flowing and doing well today and your projections don't work, you can still survive. But if your projections rely on double-digit rental growth for the next 5 years to exit, you might be in trouble. So I'm worried. On the flip side, with rising rates and unaffordability being a major issue, you have a surplus of homes being built by builders who can't unload them. What does that mean? Either they're going bankrupt or they're cutting deals. Like when we were looking for a home back in 2007, right at the end or the beginning of the real estate recession, the Great Recession, we bought a house that was not fully built. The builder basically didn't own the house. He was listing it. He was going to complete it because he had to, but the bank owned it. And the bank basically said, look, you can buy this house, no money down, 3.95% fixed. So I paused. So there's not like a catch. Let me read this paperwork to make sure you're not screwing with me. I'm not going to get arrested after I sign the closing documents. We went to closing. I asked the builder to give me, I think it was $3,500 in concessions. Okay. My closing costs weren't $3,500. So we left the table with $2,200 in cash and a house.
But that's going back to a point, that's 2008, 2009, and there was a large surplus of houses, while the rising interest rate and the affordability, not just across housing and gas, and I mean, gas is a little bit better now, but there is a significant shortage in housing, roughly about 1 million for the next 10 years. So How do you see that will play out in terms of the housing space? The prices people are selling are higher, and I don't believe in putting all the returns towards the back, and cash flow is king and queen. But how do you look at that with such a big supply demand issue?
I think though the issue is when you hear those stats, it's aggregate discussions, not and national discussions. It's not regional. But real estate is regional. The entire economy could go to like the trash can, but there are always going to be pockets that are doing well and going against the grain. And the thing that I see is that most people aren't thinking about it from the context of the exact specific markets that they're focused on. They're thinking about it in the grand scheme of things. And that's the wrong way to approach it. You've got to know the market that you're investing in or the markets that you're targeting inside and out with specificity. Is there a glut in your specific market that you're investing in or not? I know, for example, we've talked about Raleigh-Durham, and everybody's got it on their list. Every list I see, Raleigh's top 5, top 10. First of all, it's Raleigh, it's Durham, it's Chapel Hill. It's not all one entity, right? Most people don't understand that. But more importantly, the bigger thing is, does Raleigh have a glut or not, is the question that someone should ask. The same would be true if you're in San Antonio. Does San Antonio have a building glut or not? The nation does, but that doesn't matter. You're buying in this particular specific market. What's the projection for rental growth? And more importantly, what's the job growth potential? Nothing drives rental rates like jobs. And if there aren't jobs coming to a particular, like new announcements, new employers, how many layoffs are being announced? In Raleigh, for example, we have a massive biotech community. And we just had a big biotech layoff announced, not in the city itself or into the triangle itself, but just outside of it. But it impacts the triangle because people travel to go work there. You have to know your specific market and your specific market economics to be able to invest. And see, that's when I say that I see a lot of mistakes. That's one of the things that I see. People start quoting, there's a shortage, but it's a shortage of 1 million houses. If the bulk of them are in California, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, so real estate is definitely like regional and location specific. Understanding things like what's in the CoStar data, demand and supply drivers are key to help those analysis. Yeah. So the next piece I have for you is kind of talking about, taking it back a little bit, the American dream builder and investor. I feel you've been building American dream, and I feel you've been investing as well. Would you feel that you have achieved the American dream? Why or why not? And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that because I came here at an early age, but I came here when I was old enough to know the difference between what was here in America versus there in Jamaica. We were poor in Jamaica. So there was a distinct difference, even though the community where I grew up in was not wealthy by American standards. By Jamaican standards, we were actually still doing extremely well. And so for me, when I came here, I was like, they cheated me on the golden streets. I'm still a little upset about that. I'm over it. But the idea is that there was so much that you could do. There weren't as many barriers to getting into school and getting an education. You weren't restricted, for example, if you wanted to study engineering or nursing, you want to study law, you want to go to medical school. In some places you can, in some places you simply can't do that. At an early age, they determine if you're college material, Jamaica in particular, for example, and if they have determined you're not college material by the time you're 12, you're not going. It doesn't matter what you do at that point. And so America's just wide open for opportunity. I mean, you can buy property. It's crazy. There's just so much you can do. If there's an idea that you watch on YouTube or TikTok, for God help us if you watch it on TikTok, but if you watch it on TikTok, you can go out and do it literally without someone saying, well, no, you can't do that. There are all these hurdles. For me, it's a type of place where I look around and I see nothing but opportunity. Challenges, yes, there's no question. America's not perfect. No place is perfect, but there's so much opportunity if you're willing to not only work hard, that's cliche. It's really, you have to kind of think hard, right? You have to read and read broadly. You have to kind of understand all of what's happening around you. You have to understand economics. You got to understand politics. You got to understand real estate. And really, you have to read. I see way too many people, I talk to way too many young people who watch and follow. And it just burns me up when I hear someone say, I follow this person or I follow that person. It's like, well, that person has probably read and they've decided what they're going to tell you. And all you have is what they've told you. You don't have any knowledge for yourself to be able to tell you if they're showing you the right thing or not. And more importantly, because they read and they dissected it and then they regurgitated to you what they wanted you to know, you paid them money. You paid them a lot of money for no reason. A book is it's $10, $12 used on Amazon, and you paid this guy $2,500 or 10 grand for the knowledge you could have gotten yourself. It's crazy.
Yeah. And
you only got 25% of it because the good stuff they keep, right? You wouldn't tell all the secrets, would you? I mean, you wouldn't get on there for First, you got to take the first course. Then you got to take the coaching plan. Then you got to take the mastermind. Okay. At the mastermind, you get everything. But those first two levels, just teasers.
Yeah,
1,000 up
that's
here, 500 down here, 15,000, whatever. And then the mastermind's like 30 grand. And now you get the whole shebang. But you could have done that with reading your own books.
Yeah, I like that. You said it's not about hard working, which a lot of times from what our parents tell us, work hard, but think hard, think about why people are doing things.
Yeah.
And even on the investment side to really think about why certain things happen, what are the assumptions behind it. So it sounds like to me, you're saying that you've been able to get the American dream, the opportunity to achieve things. And I mean, obviously you're successful today, but the opportunity, that was like the number one thing. And it's really cool to hear that, because I think that's one of the main reasons my side of the family, my brother, my sister, want to come to the US, because there's that opportunity, and unfortunately a lot of the other countries just don't provide that. So now I know that you talked about the thinking part, and I just want to bring up your LinkedIn. You actually have a large following on LinkedIn, and when you say think, that reminds me of your posting style, which I commented and talked to you about. So in case anyone hasn't noticed it or doesn't know Patrick on LinkedIn, definitely follow him, but definitely think when you follow him, because his post is interesting. He'll make a statement, maybe contrarian, but he'll say agree or disagree. So I guess it goes along with his inspirations of wanting to inspire others to think. So pretty cool stuff. Now, the next question, maybe one or two more questions after this, is now you've achieved all this success, career, financially, and also inspirational wise as well as a coach. I know you coach others in the space and also role model for many others to look up to, like me and others. What would you say your next steps in life is?
The thing about success is it only lasts so long, right?
You have to set the next target.
In essence, that's where it is. I have another level to get to, just because once you achieve the goal you set, then you basically get bored. You get to this plateau, you look around like, this is great, I want to go up there now. So for me, we talked about the car wash business. That's really where I plan on going. Like, that's my next level, is to really be the dominant player in my state in the car wash space. That's what I want. So making acquisitions, we talked about real estate. Everyone understands now that you have tremendous tax advantages with depreciation, and even with bonus depreciation for as long as that lasts until it sunsets. But people don't understand the different asset classes give you different types of appreciation and different opportunities. You can depreciate far more, for example, with a car wash. I think we had talked about this at one point when we spoke, because there's just less building and more just shorter term like assets. That's one thing. I love to travel. And so for me, part of the reason for trying to build passive income is because, frankly, at some point in the not too distant future, I just want to get on like some ship somewhere and sail around the world for a year and come back when I'm good and ready, if I decide to come back, and sign a few checks if I can't do them like digitally. And then I'm getting back like on a ship or on a plane, and I'm gone. I've been to Paris this year, we've been to Grand Cayman, and we've been to Maui all since April. And that's just not enough. I want to go like every month, wherever I want to go. My dream is to just wake up one morning and say, let's go to Fiji, get a flight, get a plane, get on it in a couple hours, and be gone until we're good and ready. That's the real American dream for me. The freedom. Some people live that, like they work nonstop, right? And that's
Elon
the
Musk.
downside.
Elon Musk.
I mean, Elon Musk is kind of rich, but to me, that's not wealth. Like, wealth is that you don't need a check. Like my pastor says, you're only wealthy if you don't need your check. So let's say you say, you know what, I'm quitting my job. And you don't care because you make enough money without doing anything to live. That's where I think the real financial freedom is. And you read, anyone who's read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and ever played the cash flow game, have you ever played that? What's the goal of cash flow? To get to the point where you no longer need your salary and your income covers all your expenses. That's the real American dream, right? In full disclosure, the Robert Kiyosaki's been working since like he put the book out. So I don't know if he ever got there, right? I mean, he's constantly doing podcasts and writing books and all that sort of stuff. So maybe it's achievable, maybe not, but get close. I'd like to take my chance and see how that works out,
Yeah, it's definitely achievable. I've seen many others done it, and I'm sure you can do it. And if you're not close to it already, as we're wrapping up here, what's the one piece of advice you would give to anyone to have more control of their time or their career and just live the American dream, like the freedom you talked about?
I think one of your questions actually was what books inspired, right?
Yes.
I've mentioned, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because that's actually a really good book. Questionable whether there's really a rich dad. He won't answer the question. I don't know if you've ever seen the interviews. He gets really upset when you ask what's the guy's name. He doesn't exist. But the concepts still work, right? I think the biggest thing for people starting out is they've got to read. I mean, read, not watch. Read. Don't listen, read. I mean, yeah, if you're going to do those things, that's fine, but you've got to have your own knowledge. and you've got to be able to internalize it and process it yourself. I couldn't remember. I knew I'd probably forget. So I actually brought the books. This one's one of
Oh,
them. Yeah. The 80-20 Principle by Richard. It's either Koch or Coach.
mm,
You have to read this book. This book is amazing. In essence, what it says, I learned this in college. It's the Pareto principle. 80% of your output is generated by 20% of your work, right? And what he goes through and analyzes, okay, in business, as in life and anything, if you can streamline, if you have 100 things that you're doing and only 20 of them produce 80%, you got to cut out 80. Then when you have 20, if 16 produces, then you can just, as much as you can shrink to the things that like maximize your output and performance, the better. And the other consistent thing is this one where everybody's read this too, 4 Hour Work Week. You read this, right?
yes, I've read that.
That's like one of the best books ever. And it's because it's so simple that it's almost like, why didn't I think of that? I have a virtual assistant. She's in the Philippines. I've had her since like 2020. Anything I don't want to do that I need done, I give to her. Makes me 10 times more productive. Like whenever I'm doing like crunching numbers on my properties, I need P&Ls, or I need a balance sheet. I need to fill out a SBA personal financial statement, or need to do some research on an industry, whatever it is. I send her like a message. This is what I need. I go to sleep. I wake up. Most of the time I have.
Yeah.
Incredibly efficient. You're multiplying your performance because you have someone who's doing a significant amount of work and meaningful, but at the same time, not taking up a lot of your personal time. That's the big thing. And reading about business and the economy on a daily basis. You've got to know where things are going interest rate wise. The reason why I was selling my properties, my multifamily in 2020 is because I expected this downturn back then. And you have to anticipate that. And then you're going to say, okay, well, where am I going to put my money next? So let's pivot. What do I do with the proceeds that I have? You got to understand like 1031 exchanges and the fact that you don't want to pay taxes. What's the point? Like, I mean, yeah, you want to pay, but if the law is going to give you a way out, take the way out.
Definitely. Yeah. I have 2 full-time virtual employees that helps definitely leverage. And it's also a great job opportunity for those overseas as well when you get to employ them.
Yeah. Other thing I'll add too, like I have my coaching business, and you got to have someone who's above you, right? I don't agree with a lot of the mastermind type programs because they charge just an inordinate amount of money. And I just don't like that. But whoever it is, doesn't have to be someone you pay, but you've got to have a sounding board for someone who is where you want to be and you're not there yet. So you can say, hey, I'm about to do this deal. What do you think? Because chances are they may have done a deal like that and may be able to say, no, don't do that because, or change this wording in your agreement because, or did you look at this aspect of the deal or this neighborhood, or what about zoning, or whatever the case may be. There's always something that you miss, especially in real estate, that a person with more knowledge can point out to you, or a question that you could ask that you don't know to ask that they could direct you to ask. So always worth finding someone. That we've linked up on LinkedIn, and I think LinkedIn is probably the best thing since sliced bread, frankly, for just getting to know, as you say, like-minded people.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, last question is a fun question.
Okay.
I know that you still have family in Jamaica. Maybe you do still enjoy Jamaican cuisine. Do you have a dish from your home culture back in Jamaica that you like to share with the audience?
Oh, yeah. The best food on the planet is called ackee and saltfish. It's the national dish of Jamaica. It is not for everyone, but we swear by it on a Sunday morning. That's what you eat. You boil green bananas, you fry and saute kind of this. Ackee is like a fruit that's this yellowish color fruit. It's kind of, you boil it to get like the excess off, and then you basically season it up with codfish. We call saltfish, but the salty codfish, and you make this concoction out of it. Jamaicans eat that like every Sunday. That's kind of the standard meal. That's what we love. That and curried goat. I mean, if there's a holiday of any sort, Christmas, whatever, you pick the holiday, Easter, you name it. If you're not serving curried goat at that holiday, people are going to be offended. Okay. It just is what it is. I think it's delicious, but it's a matter of taste.
Awesome. So if you're visiting Jamaica or checking out the restaurant, be sure to ask for curry goat. And what was the other one?
Ackee and go with the curry goat. Just go with that. I mean, the ackee and saltfish is a real acquired taste. So
okay.
You're probably safer with the curry goat.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you or just to follow you, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
LinkedIn's the best way. I always respond to messages, as you know. So Patrick Roberts, I don't know what it is that how it would pop up. Patrick Roberts attorney probably would show up when in a LinkedIn search. So yeah, that would be probably the easiest way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. I know
Thank
you're
you.
super busy with many business you have. So I really appreciate you sharing your story and inspire others to achieve their American dream. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you again so much for tuning into the American Dream Builder and Investor podcast with me, Micy Liu. We hope you enjoy the tips and tricks that others have used to build their American dream and their trinity of freedom. We would love for you to subscribe and leave a rating and a review. You can also find all the podcast episodes and details on lifemissioncapital.com. Until then, let your life mission go wild.